It's good to be in the house of God always. Always. The greatest king who ever lived, David, he said, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of the wicked. I'd rather be at the end, the other side, maybe just have my foot in the water a little bit than be disconnected from it. I'd rather be doing the parking lot service than be in the service. You see what I'm saying? He was so desperate. He loved the house of God because he saw the value in the gathering. He saw the value of the people. The ecclesia, the Greek calls it. The ecclesia, the called out ones. The ones like you and I that are called out to make up the perfect picture of who Jesus really is as the head. Because Jesus is the head of his body. And if you're a believer in Jesus, you're part of the body. And you are a reflection of the head on every level. And so I want to welcome you this morning. I feel like God is going to do some awesome things this morning. You know, I really had one of those interesting moments this week where I don't know if you ever had these moments where you come to the end of a situation or the end of yourself in a moment and you just have this like raw, real, crazy moment with God. I had one of those crazy moments with God this week. Anybody have any crazy moments with God ever? And those are the breakthrough moments. Those are the breakthrough moments when you are wrestling over your own life to live out the calling that is put inside your life. You all have a calling inside of you, and the wrestle of life is all about getting that calling outside of you so you could live it out. Like Paul said, to live worthy of the calling that's over your life. You've been given a call since you were a child in the womb. You were given a call since you were a child on the earth to do something great. And I believe that once we find that person, I got some ringing on the stage. I don't know if you hear it, sound guys. But once you find that, once you find him, you find that. Once you find Jesus, who is the one who gives you the call, you find and begin to live out that call in and through your life. You know, we've been in a series called The Contrast of Connection the last 3 weeks, which was really a spontaneous series that we started 3 weeks ago during the message. I felt like I wasn't going to get through the whole message, and so we said, hey, we're going to turn this probably into a mini-series, and so we're at the latter end of this series, the last installment, called The Contrast of Connection. In light of that, we've been launching, we launched the sign-ups for our Connect groups, which is where we grow in life with each other and grow in life with God each week in this house. Really, it's the micro community with the macro, in the macro, really, it's where you find real life, real relationship. You can't really get that on a Sunday morning, but you can get that throughout the week. Everyone in this room should be connected somehow to healthy spiritual community. I don't just mean you hang out with a bunch of Christians that say they're Christians. I mean you hang out with a bunch of people that love Jesus like you do so that you can become better at what you do. You hang out with people. There's something about relationship with mission that's 10,000 times more powerful than relationship based on superficial things like, what kind of car do you like, man? You get what I'm saying? I mean, real deep relationship that goes deeper than just the superficial and connects you to your purpose in God. When you connect with the right people, and every successful person on the planet will tell you this, always hang around people that are better than you. But some of us in this room, we like to keep it on a easy, mediocre level because they don't like the challenge. But as soon as you integrate your life with the people that you're called to be with, there's going to be friction, there's going to be sparks, but eventually a spark will turn into a fire, and that fire will take something out. And I'm talking about becoming successful. You'll have influence in life. You need to surround yourself with awesome people. And I think there's some awesome people in this house if you haven't met them yet. Acts 2, verse 42 was really the premise of this whole series. Let me just read it quickly to you. All the believers, everyone say all the believers, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship. This is where we've been camping out. They devoted themselves to fellowship. They devoted themselves to connecting. They devoted themselves to understand the beauty that comes with connection, the contrast that comes with connection. What is contrast? Contrast, really, when you turn the contrast up on a white and black photo, a black and white photo, the blacks get blacker and the whites get whiter. And all of a sudden, you begin to see a more beautiful picture, a more defined picture, a more expressed picture than you do. Everything's just kind of grayscale. You know what I'm saying? The contrast actually makes things look more beautiful. if you were married to someone like you, it would be a really ugly situation. But thank God you're married, or you're in a relationship, or you have friendships in this room, or you're in working relationships with people that don't look like you, that aren't you, and that are completely different than you. Because in that space is where there's beautiful contrast. In that space is where you reflect the most the image and nature of God that He created you to reflect. You with me? We talked about it in Genesis 2, verse 18, and the Lord God said in the beginning, in creation, it is not good for man to be alone. That means beautiful. The word good is beautiful. It is not beautiful. I'm missing something. Just you, Adam, is not enough. There's something that you, Adam, need to make things beautiful. Everything up until this point was just good. But when I make man and wife, when I make a companion for you, it's going to be beautiful, and now I'll call it very good. I'm just paraphrasing to speed things up a little bit. Even Jesus in the beginning saw that it wasn't good for man to be alone. In other words, we all need connection. We all need relationship, real relationship. It's not good for men to be alone. It's not beautiful. Part one, the first week, I just give you a little bit of a recap for you. Part one was, we talked about the contrast of conception. Talked about how often how you start determines the trajectory of where you end up and where you go in life. Not to say that you're all a victim to your past, because you're not. Outside of the grace of God, there are things from our past, though, that have conditioned us to be what we are today. Now, in the grace of God, all those things wash away. All those things are erased. All those things no longer hold us hostage. Your history can either hold you hostage, or your history can help you, and God will turn it into a testimony when you let His redemptive love into your life, in your relationship with Him. It's either or. It really is either or, but often how you start something determines the trajectory of how you take it, of where you go with it, the process that you are led on and the journey that you're on. So we talked about the contrast of conception. Let's look at how man and women were created. And we talked about Genesis 2, verse 7, about how man was created out of the dirt. Out of the dirt of the ground, the dust of the ground. And then we talked about how it wasn't enough. And so in Genesis 2, verse, I believe it's 22, 21, and 22, then we see how God caused a great sleep to come upon man. And took a rib out of the man and made woman. Okay, and we talked about, maybe you don't know what you believe about all of this, but the reality of it is, even if you don't believe, I'm telling you right now, the reason why you as a man love ribs so much is because you want to get back what was taken from you a long time ago. So if you don't believe in that, believe in that. That's why you love ribs so much. So we talked about understanding how things were conceived, how Adam and man were created, and if you haven't watched it or listened to it, I encourage you, check out our podcast. On iTunes or on any Android phone or on YouTube, check out our podcast and watch that. And then part two, the week after, we talked about the contrast of capacity, how two are better than one, and when two capacities. Because we've all been given a capacity, right? We've all been given a measure, something in our hand that we have right now, and we've all been given a capacity, something that we are called to fulfill, that God has established within us. And when two capacities come together as one, that means a greater blessing can come, a greater strength can come. We talked about how when two capacities collide or coincide, God can deposit something bigger inside. We talked about that, right? Talked about a baby, like when two capacities come together, and and then a baby, and it's all good. But when you can't have a baby by yourself, young man, young woman, you gotta, when you're married. And so, we talked about how two are better than one, and we referenced Genesis 1, verse 28, how God blessed them. He said He made them in His own image. In verse 27, He says He blessed them. It didn't say He blessed him. It didn't say He blessed one. The blessing came on them. The commission that He wanted to have happen came on them as a couple. There's something about relationship that holds greater blessing and strength than just one person. One can do some damage, but two can do way more, is the premise of what I'm talking about today. But today, I want to talk on the subject. If you're taking notes, I'd encourage you to write this down, the contrast of calling. The contrast of calling. And we opened it up with Ephesians 4, chapter 4, verse 1. Oh, Paul, prison. He's prison. Just imagine the picture, you guys. Like every time you're struggling with something, every time you're struggling because somebody at your work talked behind your back and you're all in a mess about it. Think about Paul in prison, in chains. Think about this guy who doesn't have to do this. He's not getting necessarily paid to do this. I mean, he's doing it because he's compelled to so love people into the kingdom that he's willing to get shipwrecked. He's willing to get flogged like Jesus was, lacerated on his back, whipped, beaten, left for dead. He's willing to be in prison and still a spiritual father and an encouragement to the churches because he loves so well. He loves people so well. So next time you break a nail, next time something bad happens to you, you have the flu, remember Paul. Can you do that? Remember Paul. Remember Paul. Remember Paul. And he said in Ephesians 4:1, therefore I, a prisoner, I'm in prison for serving God. The very thing that I'm trying to encourage you to do, I'm in prison for. I'm in prison for the very thing I'm about to encourage you. I don't know about you, but I would not necessarily receive that encouragement the best. You're encouraging me to serve God, but you're in prison because you've served God. But, you know, when you fall in love with someone, it doesn't matter what comes against you. You'll do whatever you can to continue to do what you can to honor that individual. And in Paul's case, he fell in love with Jesus, changed his life. He was a murderer of Christians. The guy was also really smart. He spoke 5 languages, had the best training, but he had the best training in religion. So much so that it was really hard for him to even grasp this concept that there could be a Jesus that loved him so much. And one day he was riding on his donkey in Acts chapter 9, you could read it, and he was knocked over and a light came on him and said, I am the one that you've been persecuting the whole time. Now, if a God like him could do what he did to a guy like that, how much more you? How much more you? How much more can he forgive you? He says, I beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. Some of you have heard me say it like this before. When you understand what Paul is saying, Paul is literally saying this. If I was to break it down, what does it mean to live a life worthy of your calling? Think about it for a second. What does it mean to live every day worthy of your calling? Worthy of being a husband, worthy of being a leader, worthy of being a manager in your workplace, worthy of being a father, worthy of being a son. What does it look like to live out the calling that's on your life every day? And I've said it like this in the past. It's almost like if God were to come, and he has, and there's a number that I can't even say because, you know, how God looks at you, there's no earthly language really to define it. But let's just say the $1 billion number is like the epitome of awesomeness. Everyone says when you've reached and you're a billionaire, it's like, that's it. There's no trillionaires that you're it. That's it. So it's like you were to have $1 billion price tag on your life. That's your calling. But you live your life like you only got $10 in your pocket. That is a life not living worthy of the calling. Living worthy of your calling is to live according to the value and the price tag that God has punched you in at. That's what living worthy. That's why we wrestle, you guys, in the Word to renew our mind, to think right so we do right, to think like Him. We have the mind of Christ, the Bible says, but we don't always feel like we live that out. And so every day the challenge is to live worthy. Paul says, guys, listen, every day try. Every day believe in God. Every day walk the walk that you're called to walk. Live it out. Live the $1 billion price tag out, because I'm in prison. I could live right now like I got $10 in my pocket. I'm a charity case. I'm the charity case here. I'm in the prison, but I'm the one investing in you, the charitable cause. I'm the case, you're the cause. And even though I may only have $10 in my pocket, I'm living out like I've got $1 billion price tag on my life. That's what it looks like to live worthy of your calling. Take that and apply it to your marriage. Take that, apply it to your friendships. Take that, apply it to your workplace, your management positions that you're in, the government jobs that you have, your retirement season, your family season, whatever season you find yourself in. Apply that to every area of life. You walk with confidence. You walk with your head up. When you get down, you get back up again. Because though a righteous man may stumble 7 times, he gets back up again. What makes you righteous is not that you don't fall or fall. It's that you get up when you fall. You stumble, you trip up, get up again. Get your face out of the ground. I had one of those moments this week. It feels good to have those moments with God. You get your face out of the ground in an area. Feels so good, doesn't it? Feels so good because you start living out your calling. Jeremiah, this young prophet, has this incredible calling over his life. And in Jeremiah 1, he's called by God to be a prophet to the nations. And Jeremiah says, listen, God, I am too young. Anybody had any excuses in here before why you can't do something? Somebody wants to give you a promotion at your job. Somebody wants to give you an opportunity of leadership or something. You're like, no, I'm just not qualified. One day. The one day people are always living in the one day, and they never quite touch or taste that one day. The one day type people say, well, when I'm ready. The one day type people say, well, when New Year's hits, I'll start eating right. The one day type people say, well, I need to get more of my education first. The one day type people say, well, maybe when I'm 40, I'll start thinking about that. The one day people say, well, maybe when I'm 70, I'll start really. No. If you have a one day mentality, you have a never ending, not going to experience a type of day reality. You just got to start where you're at. You got to start where you're at, living it out day by day. Jeremiah said, I'm just a youth. And I love how God sets it up, though, because if you go out before his excuse, God sets it up strategically to bring his mind back to what he just said, because the provision and the answer to your excuse is always in the call of God over your life. Let me just show you here for a second. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4, it says, the Lord gave me this message. I knew you before. This is Jesus speaking to Jeremiah. I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as my prophet to the nations. Then he says, but I'm only a youth. But God wanted him to focus on this one part. If you can remember how it all started, if you can remember that before you were ever even where you're at right now as a youth, I'd already called you. Like, I'd already predestined you for greatness. Everyone in this room is predestined for greatness. In fact, everyone, the only thing that you're really predestined for in life, according to Ephesians, is to be adopted as sons into the family of God. But you have the choice to accept that adoption or not. But you're predestined for it, because it's God's will that none shall perish or be disconnected. God wants a relationship with everyone in this room. But he's not going to force himself, because love never forces themselves on another. Love gives an invitation. Love gives an invitation. You know, love accepts, love loves unconditionally despite the choice that the other party makes. Love loves no matter what. It's always giving an invitation. And God wanted to get Jeremiah's attention back on, okay, how did I preface this whole call over your life? I said, I knew you. So if I knew you in the beginning, if I formed you, if I fashioned you, whatever I'm saying right now, you must trust that you have what you need, even though you're a youth, to fulfill the calling over your life, to live worthy of the calling over your life. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because God will never bless who you pretend to be. He will always bless who you are and who you are called to be. And if I've called you to be a prophet to the nations, I'm going to bless you as a prophet to the nations. And if I can get your attention on the fact that I predestined this all in the womb, in the beginning, and I formed and fashioned you the perfect way to fulfill that call, you can live worthy of the calling and act like you got the $1 billion price tag on your life. Because God will never bless who you pretend to be. You think you got to do something like they do, or like he does, or like she does, or be like them, or sound like them. But when you become who you are called to be and trust that God, if God has called you, he's given what you need to fulfill that call, then you start living out the worthiness of that calling every day of your life. Ephesians 2 verse 10 says that we are God's poem. It says that for we are God's workmanship. Say it with me, workmanship. That word is poema. It means it's like I was to say we are God's poem. God has written this beautiful picture of who we are, the calling over our life in the form of it's an illustration of a poem over our life. It's all laid out. It's beautiful. Anybody read a poem before in their life and that you were touched by, that you were actually impacted by? God is impacted by the poem of your life every day. Whether he's sad about where you're going with your life or whether he's happy. Because he's always a happy God. But there are times when he wishes that if you just lived out the worthiness of your call, you would be happier. And it pleases God when you're happy. Because you're usually the happiest when you're in faith. And doing what you know you're supposed to do, not what you are pretending you're supposed to do. For we are his workmanship, his own masterwork, a work of art created in Christ Jesus. What makes you awesome is that you are different. You are different. You're different. I want to give you, if I can, four different layers, or what I would call ingredients, that help propel and perpetuate us living out the worthiness of our calling in life. I want to give you 4 things today really quick that help us, that when they're in alignment and in order in our life, they all support our call. How many know this, that you may have a call to do great things in your life, but you cannot do it? You cannot do it if you do not have certain key realities in place in your life. Right? I mean, it's just practical. I mean, you cannot be who you're called to be if you don't have the right things in place in your life. If you can't be a brain surgeon if you don't have your education and your training and how to operate on a brain. Right? There are certain elements that have to be in play so that you could fulfill out your calling in life. Well, in our spiritual life, it goes the same thing, and it applies both in the church, the house of God, but also in the marketplace, in the world we live, the families that we take care of, the friendships that we have. It plays into every area of our life. We have to have these things in order. And sometimes if we don't have them in order, we see the result of that, and we see the chaos, and we see the disorder, we feel the imbalance often before we see it. We feel something's off usually before we can see what is off. Because the feeling of something being off gives us the attention, the awareness to look for whatever it is that could be off. And so my hope today is to outline a few of those things for you. If you could take notes, I want you to write them down. Number 1, there's the calling of community. We have to have this in place. If you want to live out the beauty that of your calling in life, that when, understanding that there is a community call first. You have to find your tribe. You have to find your community. Our callings are created to connect through God and connect with each other. You really have no communion with God the way that you are supposed to if you never relate to anybody else. You can't have a full understanding of who God is without understanding how to love the people around you. You can't. Period. You just can't. Because when you say you love God, that is always tested with how you love people. So if you don't have people to love, if you don't have annoying managers in your workplace, bad coworkers, if you don't have challenges in your life, then you're never going to learn how to get your love game on. So really, you can't reflect God's love well, which means you're missing a part of your relationship with God. It's God and people. It's always going to be that way. If you don't like people, you're going to have a hard time in life. Because people are the ones that are going to hire you to make money. And if you become your own boss, unless you want to live in your mom's basement your whole life and be on the computer, you need to work with people and hire people. And people have to like you. So the calling of community. Write this down. There is no contrast outside of community. And when there's no contrast, there's no beauty. Contrast is what makes things distinctly different, which adds beauty. God said, I'll bless male and female. Together, there's a greater blessing. Together, there's a greater capacity. Together, it's beautiful. It wasn't beautiful when you were alone, but now that you're together, I see this beautiful contrast. In other words, without companionship, without friendship, without connection, and without community, there is no beauty. Because there's only beauty where there is contrast, and there's only contrast when there is community. Let's see it, 1 Corinthians 12. This is Paul again, encouraging the church at Corinth, and he's bringing some order and alignment. He's bringing encouragement around the different things that we're called to do and the gift sets that we have been given, the graces that we've been given to bless the people around us. It says in verse 18 of chapter 12, and I'm jumping around a little bit today, but I hope you can track with me. He says this, but now, as things really are, God has placed and arranged the parts of the body, each one of them, just as he willed and saw fit. with the best balance of function. If they were all a single organ, where would the rest of the body be? But now, as things really are, there are many parts, different limbs and organs, but one single body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. In other words, every person, every body in the body of Christ is called to play a specific role. And when every role is functioning, the body is healthy. Look at business, for example. Look at the most successful businesses out there. They all know their role. They all know their function. And because of that, and they're aligned to the vision of the business is successful. The business is not successful because a few people at the top have the right vision. The business is successful because the people at the top relate the heart, the mind, the vision, and it's spilled over into the people that they've hired, and they all carry the same value system, but they also all carry a different function, and together they're strong. Now that connects into the micro family unit at home, and it connects to the family unit within the spiritual family of God, which is for us kingdom culture. When we all understand who we are, we can never say we don't need you, because the reality of it is, for me to function the way that I'm called to function, I need you. For you to function the way you're called to function, you need me. And together we're one big happy family. I love when the spirit of Eminem comes on me and I just rap. Write this down. There's no community without mission. See, Paul is speaking to these people, these believers, in context to you have a mission together. I'm not asking you to play a role without a mission and a purpose. Community without mission, like I said, is superficial and will only last so long. You can only talk about beer, cars, money, and sex for so long, until you realize how shallow the relationship is. That's why when I gave my life to Jesus, I lost all of my drug friends, all of my drinking buddies, because I just didn't care anymore about that lifestyle. I wanted real deal. I know I'm on this earth for one chance. I have one chance to make it, man. I have one chance to know my Creator. I have one chance to find my purpose, and I know the only place I'm going to find it is when I find the one who gave me the purpose to begin with. I'm going to waste my time on frivolous things. Paul warns us over and over again to avoid those annoying genealogies and arguments about this and that. Just focus on one thing: Christ and Himself crucified. Just land on the gospel message. Land on that one thing that I've called you, the cause that I've called you to live out. Land on that one thing, having a relationship with me, and everything else will come into order in your life. This is why the church is so powerful. You know, today is the official launch of our fall semester of Connect groups, and we talked about that, and we have different Connect groups, and there's a Connect group for everybody. But really the heart and the purpose of this is that we want you to be strong spiritually. If you're a new couple, if you're an older married couple, if you're a non-married couple, if you're in a dating relationship of some sort, you have friends, you're alone, you don't have many relationships in your life, you're burnt out on life, you're burnt out on your job, you hate your life, you hate your job, you need relationships. If you're having the best time of your life and you're happy, you need relationships. It doesn't matter who you are, you will never succeed past the level of relationships that you have currently in your life. People will either bring you higher or bring you lower. They'll bring you higher or they'll bring you lower. But let me just tell you this, that everyone in this room needs healthy spiritual relationships. I'm not just talking about mentors that are in your field. Those are good relationships to have because they affect your career. But if the kingdom part of you is not being effective, just the skill set part of you is being affected, you're going to be a lopsided, ugly person to look at spiritually. Because your skills are it's like a half of your body is like really strong. Imagine at the gym, really strong. And the other half of your body is like a weak, skinny, little, fragile, brittle piece of thing that just one wrong blow to the wrong side and you're done. And all that skill that you developed becomes useless because your character and the spiritual part of you wasn't strong to handle the heavier side of your skill. You see what I'm saying? God doesn't care about how gifted you are, about how successful you are in the end. He cares about how deep your character goes, how deep your relationship with God goes, how deep your spiritual root systems go, because He knows that success eventually, without that, will take you out and will uproot you. Whether it's Mariah, whether it's Harvey, Irma, whatever hurricane might come against your life, if you're not strong and rooted in your relationship with Jesus and with other people that believe what you believe and are going where you're going, you'll be uprooted at the first hurricane in your life. It doesn't matter all the skill you invested in, all the things that people have, it doesn't matter in the end, because you lost your family, you lost your wife, you lost your husband, you lost your kids, but you have a lot of money in your pocket. We need relationship, the right relationships. It says in Acts 2, verse 42, all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to what? Help me. Fellowship, connection. That word for devoted, it means to continue steadfastly with listen to this, relenting continuance. That's what it means. They didn't just have connection. They didn't just have community. They devoted themselves to community. They devoted themselves with unrelenting continuance. No matter how hell or high water, I'm with you. That's what family does, right? I'm with you. Hell or high water, I've devoted myself in unrelenting continuance to you. That's what community looks like. And look what happens as a result of community. Verse 43, a deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. Flipping over to verse 47, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all people, and each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. In other words, results happened. Healthy community means healthy culture. Healthy culture means reform, change, transformation. Number 2, write this down, the calling of contribution. The calling of contribution. Write this down. There's no community without contribution. There is no community without contribution. There's no connection without contribution. Ever been with a friend or someone that just, it's like all they do is suck? Like a vampire. Ever, you know, any vampire friends? You get with them and they just and you leave and all the blood's drained from your body. You feel like you're going to pass out. Anybody ever given blood before? I feel like that with certain people. I walk away and I'm like, oh, I'm going to pass. I need some water quickly. I need some water. I need some orange juice or something. You ever feel that way? Come on. Am I the only person? I'm saying this. I'm the pastor. Confessions of a pastor. I'm just being honest. There's no real connection without contribution. You got to contribute to each other. The unfortunate thing about leadership is oftentimes the leader is always the one contributing. And the other person is just sucking. It's like the person, I got to be careful what I say, but because of my position, but there's got to be contribution, you guys. I heard this statement, if you ain't helping, just period. So start doing something with what you've got. Don't be the vampire that you've been in the last season. Winston Churchill said it like this: we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. You can just live by just getting. You live, make it. You get by. You just suck. You suck. You just suck. On both levels. I'm just joking. No, you take. Or you can find life by what you give to life and those that are around your life. You with me this morning? You hearing what I'm saying? I mean, can I just bring you along a little bit further of a journey here quickly? Romans 12, Paul is encouraging now the church at Rome. I've gone from Ephesians to 1 Corinthians to now I'm at the church of Rome, and he's encouraging them again in a pretty tough situation. And it says in verse 12, verse 4, just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. Interesting. I belong to you, and you belong to me. That's why we're such a happy family. We all belong to each other. Isn't that awesome? Come on, hit your neighbor and say, you belong to me. You belong to me. I belong to you. I belong to you. You belong to me. Verse 6, in his grace. Listen to how it says, in his grace. It's not by your own effort, not by your own merit, not by your own struggle and push. In his grace, God has given us, everyone say us, different gifts for doing certain things well. He's given you something to do something really well and you something to do something well. Remember, God does not bless who you pretend to be. Be the best that you are called to be. That's where the blessing falls. says really quick, he says, if you've been given the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving, serve others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it's to give generously. If God has given you the leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness, some of you need a shift for showing kindness. I think that's a word. If you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. I honestly, I think that the family unit, just as an illustration, is a good example of what it looks like to live out the benefits of contribution. Like I mean, imagine at home, like, your parents. How many parents in the room? How many parents in the room? How many have like more than 2 kids? How many have less than 2 kids? Yeah, well, no matter what the equation is, how many have more than 4 kids? Hero. It doesn't matter what the equation is. You know how it feels, right, in the home when only a part of your house is contributing. My wife knows how it feels when I don't clean the crumb off the countertop that I left on the countertop when she cleaned it before I got there. She, but it's true. Like, we all have a different version of what contribution looks like. And then sparks fly, and then we make out, and it's all good. But hey, but we all know what happens. Like when my kids are all under the age of 8. So I have 4 kids, and so we're giving them chores and giving them life lessons and helping them save and helping them learn to distribute their money. They have a jar where they give to God. They give a tithe of their money. They have a jar for generosity. They have a jar for expenses, and they have a jar for spending. And whether they do a task or they're just good or we just want to bless them, because that's what Jesus does, right? He doesn't just always bless you because you do a good thing. He blesses you just because you're good, because he loves you and you have the stamp of Jesus on your life. That's period. And so, we've been doing this. And so, sometimes I'll ask them, and more now as they get older, they have specific things that they're supposed to do. Like, you have the staples, right, that you're called to do to live life. And then you have those areas where you're more gifted in. You follow what I'm saying? Like, not everybody is called to do the same thing, but we're all called to do the same staples in life. You got to brush your teeth, right? You got to make your bed, right? How many make their bed in here? You got to make your bed. You got to clean the dishes up. You got to put the clothes away. You got to do the laundry. You got to take a shower. There's things you have to do in life. And I would never expect Ezekiel to make my daughter Victory's bed. I would never expect Promise to shower my daughter Victory. You get what I'm saying? Like, they have to take care of themselves. They have to contribute. And there's an age that comes where they can't expect us to be doing those things anymore that we once did. They have to learn to contribute by lightening the load. They have to learn to contribute by, if they make a mess, they pick up the mess. I'm trying to teach my kids right now, if you make a mess in one floor, don't go to another floor until you clean up the mess on that other floor, because I don't want messes on all 3 floors. So before you leave that one floor, clean it up and bring it and make a mess on the other floor. I don't care. But I want you to contribute by not putting the onus on me to clean up your mess all the time. But we do this, don't we? We have this weird expectation. Can I just say a few things here? It's like in our jobs. It's like everybody, you go to your job, right? You have a specific function and a task to do. You've been given a role. You walk in, the trash can's full. You're like, I'm not the janitor here. So I'm just going to keep adding my orange peels, my McDonald's bags, things. Now it's pouring out of the garbage can. And for some reason, you just think you're so awesome that you don't have to carry the responsibility to contribute, because maybe the janitor is cleaning someone else's garbage. So rather than cleaning the garbage that's right in front of you, you wait until someone else does it for you. We live a lot like this in our workplace, right? Don't we? In our family, like sometimes my kids think, well, mommy and daddy will clean it up, right? Mommy and daddy will clean it up. Sometimes Michelle and I have joked. We're like, hey, tonight you're putting us to bed. No, you're putting us to bed. It's your turn. You brush my teeth. Pick up my clothes. You feed me, okay? Tonight, you guys, you're cooking dinner. Cook dinner for Michelle and I, please. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we joke around like that. But I want my kids to realize what they have. And sometimes you don't realize what you have until you start contributing to what somebody else has. You realize, wow, I'm so blessed that I have a garbage man cleaning up this garbage every day. Because you've done it once or twice. You realize what you have. So we do this in life, in all kinds of areas of life, when we could be helping. We could be, I went through a season. I'm going to let you into my weird life, okay? Can I do that for a second? This really is really gross, kind of weird, but I'm just going to let you in. There was a season, I say it as a season, because all seasons change, thank God. There was a season of my life when I would walk into a men's bathroom. And any men in here, you know how men's bathrooms can get. Because some men are blind when they go to the bathroom. Right? Some men just don't care because someone else is going to clean it up or whatever. And some men, it's like they decided just to paint a beautiful picture all over the walls. And I just don't understand it. But I don't know how it is in women's bathrooms. A woman could say that. I don't know. I don't go into women's bathrooms. So I have by accident a couple times, but not on frequently. And so I went through this season where I felt obligated. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like a spirit of deception or if it was just like a good heart to clean up the seat and the bathroom for the next guy, even if it wasn't my mess. I just had this voice in the back of my head, just do it because you'd want someone to do it for you. Now that season has passed a little bit. Having 4 kids, I'm busy, I don't have a lot of time. But honestly, there was a season where I was doing that, and I started to appreciate more and more a clean washroom as I was the one cleaning. These are public bathrooms, you guys. I'm not talking about like at home, because at home is controlled. I'm talking about public. Who wants to clean a public bathroom? I mean, who here is as righteous as me right now? Come on. Just joking. I'm just joking. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, we think that everyone should carry the weight for us. We think about that in the church as well. It's like, okay, we come here week in and week out, and we love this place, transformation's happening, but somebody else is going to sow in financially. Somebody else is going to sacrifice financially, because you know what? I don't need to. Somebody else is going to take care of it for me. Let me just make this statement here. When you don't contribute to environments that you're receiving from, you miss out on the beauty that comes through living out your calling in every season that you're in life. When you are not a contributor and you're simply just a taker, you are missing a huge part of your relationship with God every day on every level. This is why there is no community without contribution. If you ain't helping, you ain't helping. You may be getting, but you're only getting a measure of what you could be when you're helping. You see what I'm saying? When you're contributing. Oh, I love you. Some of you don't like that too much, but I love you. I'm just the messenger. Number three, this is now really quick. The calling of confidence. I'm going to speed through this. I'm almost done, I promise. The calling of confidence. A calling without confidence is a calling not lived. Write that down. A calling without confidence is a calling not lived. Now, I'm speaking more right now to the leader inside of you. Everyone in this room has a leader inside of them. You have a leader inside of you. You got a leader inside of you. There's something inside of you that you haven't even tapped into yet. You may not be the leader of thousands. You may not be the leader of hundreds, but you could be the leader of tens. And if you can be the leader of tens that God's called you to be, you live in success according to God's eyes. You could be the leader of 3 and do that 3 well. Do it really well. The leader of your home, do it well. I'm talking to the confidence inside of you that looks like some form of leadership. 2 Corinthians 3 verse 12, Paul's talking about the difference between the old covenant and the new covenant. How one is not as good as the one that has come, the new covenant. Paul is saying, listen, he says in verse 12, since this new way gives us such confidence, we can be very bold. Boldness will always lead you where fear cannot. And there is no leadership in life with no confident boldness of what your zone is supposed to be. There is no leadership in life without you thinking every day, how am I living worthy of the calling that's over my life? Because when I live worthy of the calling and you live worthy of the calling, that contrast makes this beautiful connection, and everybody begins to see how awesome it is because everybody's flowing in their zone and functioning in their domain. You hear what I'm saying? I'm talking about not the human effort. I'm talking about the Godfidence. Say it with me, Godfidence. The kind of confidence that comes only when boldness comes on you in God, in your relationship with God. The kind of confidence that right now, when you, as someone who doesn't know Jesus, has never even tasted before. I'm talking about how when God comes into your life and heals you and changes you from the inside out and gives you a new confidence and a new boldness, that's where you begin to live out the calling side of your leadership. You got beautiful potential in you that's untapped right now. Many of you, every one of you in this room. It's untapped. God wants to bring you into this in this season. You ever been in a room where a whole bunch of confidences collide? A bunch of strong leaders? You're like, who is this guy? Everybody's sizing everybody up. You know, my wife and I go to this leaders gathering every November in Los Angeles, and for the last, I think, 6 years now, and we get to hang out with some of our closest friends that initially, you know, some of them weren't our closest friends, but leaders from all around the world, from South Korea, from Brazil, from all over the U.S., from Canada, from all over Europe, from Australia, from Dubai, all over the world. We gather and we just hang out. We're accountable to each other. We just open up our hearts. We just go deep together, and it's incredible. But I remember the first couple of times when we had these gatherings, we came to the second ever gathering that had happened, and so you just have this like who's who, you know, there's all these confident, leaders that are changing the game. There's like people that are in like, war-torn countries that are like their whole ministry is to drug lords and those that raise up child soldiers, and their whole ministry is like literally connected to the UN, in that if they don't call within 24 hours, the UN has to come in and fly and pick them out. That's the kind of people that we're meeting with, and people that are changing the game around the world, doing incredible things. And it's so funny when you walk into these moments, and there was this one guy who's my close friend now, and he told me this after the fact. When he first met me, he's like, who is this guy? And in my mind, I'm like, I don't remember what I thought, but I'm just like, maybe I could feel his resistance, so I started resisting. You know how it is, right? Two confident people collide, But now we're like the closest of friends. It's awesome. And sometimes the people that you have the most destiny with are the ones that you have the most war over in relationship. The calling of confidence. I would go through Ephesians 4:11 if I had time, about the different leadership giftings and what that does and the calling over that. But I would say this, that in Ephesians 4 verse 3, it says, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Why? Because when there's massive contrast in the room, there's massive sparks that begin to fly. Black and white. When you put the contrast up, the black gets blacker and the white gets whiter. I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about the contrast of differences, the contrast of different functions and giftings and leadership abilities. When they get into a room, either it could be the most beautiful picture or it could turn into World War III. Just watch CNN for a day. On one end of the spectrum, and then way over here, and you have this contrast of black versus white, illustratively speaking, and it's like this clash, and you want to mess with me, I'm going to mess with you, and it gets crazy, right? That's why Paul says here, guys, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace, because when you start living out the calling of confidence, you're going to have a great contrast you're going to have to deal with, and it can either be beautiful or it could be fatal, depending on how you interpret it. Number 4, my last point. We have the calling of the cause. The calling of the cause. Paul walked, lived, breathed this out. The fact that he could be in prison, in chains, like shackled up. The fact that he could be in this place of struggle and yet so see through the case that he was, the charity case that he was, and he could see into the charitable cause that was at hand, this cause to love people, this cause to lay down his life for people, this cause to sacrifice his life for people, this cause to be in relationship with people, this cause to spend his life writing letters to encourage people when he's the guy that should be encouraged because he's in jail for his faith, and here he is. So about the cause that anybody can look at Paul's life and say, man, this guy lived worthy of his calling. this guy lived it out, man. This guy lived it out. Because of his success, I could be successful. His success brings this beautiful contrast with my success. And if you look at him and you look at me, you could say, wow, even though we have different life expressions, different callings, different functions, different life experiences, there's this beautiful contrast when we all get together and we all accept everyone else's story and say, hey, as long as we're living out the call over our lives and connecting with the people that are around our lives, we're going to win in every area of our life.